For 12 years, my married sisters treated me like their lonely nanny. When I brought a date to the reunion, they said, "Wow, he must be desperate." He laughed and said, "You didn't tell me they were this petty." I, 42 female, am the youngest of 3 sisters. For over a decade, I was treated like the family's spare part. The single, childless sister with nothing better to do, the one who could be summoned at the drop of a hat to watch kids, run errands, mediate conflicts, plan events, and fill the background noise of their curated family lives. I grew up in Albany, New York. Old neighborhood, colonial-style homes, the kind of place where neighbors knew each other by the sound of their screen doors slamming shut. My parents were hardworking, quiet people. Dad was a mechanic, Mom worked as a nurse's aide. We weren't rich, but we had stability. My sisters, Camille, now 48, and Desiree, now 50, were always close to each other. They were a package deal. I was 6 years younger than Camille, 8 from Desiree, and for most of my childhood, it felt like I was tagging along in a play that already had its stars. By the time I finished college, they were both married with kids. Camille had 3 sons with her husband Lucas, and Desiree had 2 girls with her husband Marcus. They settled in the Hudson Valley, both in upper-middle-class neighborhoods with picture-perfect houses and cookie-cutter marriages. I moved around a bit in my 20s. I worked as a graphic designer, bounced between cities, Rochester, then Philly for a bit. I wasn't avoiding settling down, it just hadn't happened yet. And I was fine with that. But once our parents passed, first Dad, then Mom 2 years later, things shifted hard. It was like they both looked at me and thought, well, she's got the time now. They never said it like that, of course. They'd say things like, "Alina, you're so good with the boys. Can you stay for the weekend? We'd love for you to be part of the girls' birthday party, and maybe you can help set it up while we get everything ready. Lucas and I haven't had a date night in forever. You'd be a lifesaver if you stayed over." It started with weekends. Then full weeks. Summers, holidays, even some Thanksgivings where I did all the cooking while they entertained. I was always invited, but never truly included. Always the helper, never the guest. And what made it harder to see was that it didn't feel malicious at first. They framed everything like they were including me, like they were doing me a favor by involving me in their lives. "You don't have kids, Alina, you'll never understand how overwhelming it is. You're so lucky you can sleep in on Sundays." But I wasn't sleeping in. I was up at 6 a.m. making waffles and wiping noses while they went to yoga or had mimosas with friends. I dated here and there, but my sisters never took it seriously. Any time I mentioned a guy I was seeing, they'd smirk or say things like, "Oh, is he another musician? Or maybe this one won't ghost you." It was dismissive, cruel in that passive way women sometimes are to each other when they feel superior. I kept swallowing it. 4 years. What choice did I have? I loved my nieces and nephews. I loved being around family, and after our parents died, they were all I had left. But I started to notice a pattern. Every time they had a crisis, I was the first to call. When Desiree and Marcus had a blow-up fight, she stayed with me for 4 days. When Camille's youngest broke his arm and she couldn't deal, I left work early to help with the others. I had an emergency plan. Always available. Always on call. But no one ever asked how I was. Not once. Then something small, but pivotal, snapped me out of it. It was last summer. Camille and Lucas were going to Italy for their 15-year anniversary. She asked me to take care of the kids for 10 days. Not just babysit. She asked me to move into their house, do the school runs, cook, clean, homework, all of it. When I said I couldn't, because I had a client project due and I wasn't comfortable pausing everything, Camille didn't say okay or "I understand." She said, "Wow. I guess we'll figure something out." No gratitude. No respect. Just pure disappointment that I wasn't available like a paid au pair. That night, Desiree called me. "What's going on with you? Are you okay?" Camille said, "You're being weird." It floored me. That I was being weird. I didn't yell. I didn't get angry. I just told her the truth. "I'm tired. I feel taken for granted. I'm not your backup mom." She was silent for a second. Then, like she hadn't even heard me, she replied, "Well, if something's going on, you can talk to us." If something's going on. It wasn't about them using me, it was about me being too weak to say no. That's how they saw it. So I did something that felt terrifying at the time. I pulled back. I stopped answering every call. I skipped a few Sunday dinners. I didn't send good luck at school cards to the kids. I let myself be distant. And for the first time in years, I started breathing like a person again. Around that same time, I reconnected with an old friend, Mallory, from high school. She lives in Charlotte now. We hadn't talked in ages, but she'd seen a post of mine on Facebook and messaged me, asking if I was okay. We got to talking and she invited me to visit for an alumni barbecue in October. It felt random, spontaneous. But I went. And that's where I met Reese. Reese is everything I didn't know I needed. He's 45, divorced, works in construction project management, and has a quiet confidence that makes everyone else in the room feel like they're yelling. We hit it off immediately. Not in the Hollywood way, but in the, oh wow, I can breathe around you way. He listened more than he talked. And he asked real questions. After a few weeks, we started seeing each other regularly. He'd drive up to Asheville on weekends. I'd go down to his place outside of Burlington when I had time. One night, I told him everything. About my sisters. My role in the family. The loneliness that lived just beneath the surface of the cool aunt image. He didn't say much right away. He just held my hand. Then he said, "You don't owe anyone that version of yourself anymore." That line stuck with me. And then came the invitation, the annual family cookout. Hosted by Desiree this time, in Poughkeepsie. It had become an unspoken status showcase, the kids' achievements, couples updates, photo ops for social media. I RSVP'd yes. And I told them I was bringing someone. Camille's reply? "Oh, can't wait to meet your mystery man." I could almost hear the condescension dripping off her emoji. Reese was game. He even joked on the drive up, "Should I bring a business card to prove I'm real?" I laughed. But my stomach was in knots. When we got there, it was like a movie scene. Lawn chairs, charcuterie boards, over-decorated patio. Camille saw us and her face visibly changed. She blinked. Then gave that half-smile I'd grown to hate. "Wow," she said, looking at Reese. "He must be desperate." Desiree, not missing a beat, added, "Right? You really surprised us with this one." I didn't even have time to react. Reese just chuckled and said, "You didn't tell me they were this petty." And then he walked off to grab us drinks. No shouting. No scene. Just a man who didn't need to defend his ego or mine. The silence after that was deafening. My sisters didn't know what to say. I think they expected me to laugh with them. Or apologize. Or explain how I landed someone like Reese. But I didn't do any of those things. I just stood there and let them sit in it. And for the first time in 12 years, I felt taller. The rest of the cookout was a quiet unraveling, at least for my sisters. They didn't say much to me for the rest of the afternoon. Not that I cared. I had Reese by my side, sipping a drink, chatting with my nephews about football, and complimenting Desiree's husband on the grill setup like he hadn't just dropped the most searingly honest one-liner of the decade. It was subtle, but I noticed the shift. I wasn't being asked to help in the kitchen or herd the kids for a group photo. Nobody tossed me the car keys and asked me to run to the store for ice. I was a guest. A real guest. Not because they'd suddenly seen the light, but because Reese's presence forced them to see me differently. Like I wasn't just an extension of their own chaotic households. I was a person, with someone who clearly valued me. Later that evening, when the kids were chasing bubbles and adults started lazily sinking into patio chairs, Camille approached me. She had that practiced smile again, the one she used when she wanted to say something sweet that wasn't sweet at all. "So, where'd you meet him? Church? One of your design clients?" I gave a tight smile. "At a barbecue, actually. Old friend introduced us." "Wow. And he's okay with all this?" she asked, gesturing vaguely around at the family chaos, like she expected him to run screaming from the mess. "Yeah," I said. "He's fine. He's seen bigger messes than this." She blinked, not quite sure if it was a dig. It was. A small one. Desiree came over a few minutes later, wine in hand, voice syrupy. "He's cute," she said. "Kind of rugged. Not your usual type." I shrugged. Maybe I finally figured out what I actually want. And that made her blink too. They didn't say much after that. I think for the first time in a long time, they realized I didn't need them. And that shook them. Reese was easy the rest of the evening. He danced with the younger kids during a bad remix of an old Backstreet Boys song. He helped clear some of the folding chairs at the end. When we finally slid into my car to leave, he turned to me and said, "That was not as bad as you made it sound. But they definitely got their heads up their own asses." I laughed so hard I had to wipe my eyes before backing out of the driveway. The days after the reunion were strangely quiet. Usually after a family event, there'd be a flurry of texts, Camille sending me pictures of the kids, Desiree sending me a "we should do brunch soon" message. But nothing came this time. At first I thought maybe they were mad. But then I realized they were recalibrating. I'd broken the image they'd built of me, the harmless, helpful, pitiful single sister with nothing better to do. And they didn't know what to do with this version of me, this confident, unbothered woman who wasn't auditioning for their approval anymore. About a week later, Camille texted me. "Camille, hey. Just wanted to say it was good seeing you. Reese seems nice." That was it. No smiley face. No "hope he sticks around." Just that. Which, coming from her, was practically a confessional. I didn't respond right away. I let it sit. The next day, I simply replied, "Thanks. It was good seeing you too." The shift in power dynamics was subtle, but it was there. I'd stopped playing the part they wrote for me, and now they were trying to figure out the new script. Meanwhile, things with Reese were getting more solid. We weren't rushing anything, but the clarity and ease he brought into my life felt like a warm bath after a decade of cold showers. No games. No judgment. He even helped me redo the tiny sunroom in my apartment into an office so I could finally stop working from the dining table. In that little office, one Sunday morning, I got FaceTime from Desiree. It was her daughter, Talia, holding a drawing. "Aunt Alina. Look. I drew you and the guy from the barbecue." It was stick figures, obviously, but she'd labeled them, Alina and Nice Man. I couldn't help but smile. Desiree popped into the frame and gave me a sheepish look. "We should get together soon," she said. "Maybe, with everyone." I didn't commit. I just said, "We'll see. Things are kind of busy lately." Because they were. But more importantly, because I was busy on purpose. I had a life now that didn't orbit around their needs. I had my own gravitational pull. After that, they started reaching out differently. Less, "Can you babysit?" and more, "We'd love to have you over if you're free." Less assumption, more invitation. It didn't make up for everything, but it was something. And the most telling thing? Camille sent me a birthday card, just a card, no gift, but inside it was a handwritten note. "I know we haven't always shown it, but you mean a lot to this family. Thank you for always being there. Even when we didn't deserve it." I read it twice. Then once more. That night, I showed Reese. He kissed the top of my head and said, "Still petty. But maybe growing." And I couldn't argue with that. Still petty. But maybe, growing. The shift in our dynamic was slow, like tectonic plates grinding into new positions. But it was real. Over the months, I watched my sisters recalibrate their approach, clumsily, awkwardly, but with a kind of reluctant sincerity. The most satisfying part wasn't just their change in tone. It was that I no longer needed it to validate me. Reese and I continued building a life together. By the spring, we had unofficially moved in together, splitting time between his place in Vermont and mine outside Asheville. It wasn't grand or dramatic. It just happened, naturally, like most healthy things do. Professionally, I'd reached a new level too. A former client had referred me to a small publishing house in New York, and they hired me to redesign their entire brand. It turned into a retainer contract, steady, meaningful work that gave me both income and creative freedom. When I told Camille and Desiree about the contract, they were stunned. "You're working with a publisher?" Camille said, voice catching. "Since when have you done book stuff?" Desiree added. I just smiled. "Since always. You just never asked." I think that was the moment they realized how little they'd bothered to see me, really see me, outside the role they'd cast me in. Then came the final reunion. The bookend. It was late summer, almost exactly a year after the cookout where Reese first stunned them into silence. Camille was throwing a graduation party for her eldest son, Drew, who had just finished high school and gotten into Cornell. There would be extended family. Old friends. Aunts and uncles we hadn't seen in years. The usual competitive undercurrent, whose kids were doing best, who had aged the least. Reese and I arrived dressed appropriately, but not showy. He wore a slate button-down and clean slacks. I wore a rust-orange wrap dress and low heels. Casual, elegant, calm. And then we brought the gift. Camille had sent out a general note about gifts not being necessary, which in family speak meant, we expect something impressive. So I gave Drew a check for $2,000. Neatly tucked into a personalized card with a quote from Toni Morrison. Not flashy. Not loud. Just significant enough to be noticed, and meaningful. Camille opened the card and physically gasped. "Oh my God," she whispered, handing it to Lucas. Alina, Reese stood beside me, perfectly silent, like he always did when he knew the moment would speak for itself. "I just wanted to help a little," I said. "College isn't cheap." Desiree's eyes widened. She leaned in. "You just gave him $2,000? How?" I turned and smiled at her. "Well, Desiree, I'm not broke. I never was. I just stopped spending all my time working for free." It wasn't cruel. It wasn't loud. But it landed like a thunderclap. The rest of the party was surreal. My sisters hovered around me differently. Not cold. Not warm. Curious. I'm a little embarrassed. Slightly in awe. The extended family noticed too. "Aren't you the youngest?" someone asked me. "Yes," I replied. "You seem like the one with it all together," he laughed. And for the first time in my life, in that family, I did feel like the one with it together. Later that evening, as the crowd thinned and people began to say their goodbyes, Camille pulled me aside. She didn't preface it with small talk. She didn't make excuses. "I think we took advantage of you for a long time," she said quietly. "I don't think I really saw how unfair it was. We were so caught up in our own lives that we assumed you were just happy to be around." I nodded. I wanted to be. Until it started to feel like I didn't have a choice. She looked down at her drink, then back at me. "I'm sorry. I really am. I don't know if I ever said that out loud." "You didn't," I said. "But it's good to hear now." She didn't cry. I didn't hug her. We didn't need to. The power imbalance had finally tipped. And we both knew it. Desiree approached me later too. She didn't apologize, not exactly. But she said something I never expected. "I think I envied you." I still do, honestly. You don't fake it. You live the life you want. That hit harder than I thought it would. Reese and I left just before sunset. We walked to the car slowly, and he opened the door for me like always. As I settled in, I looked at him and said, "That was weirdly perfect." He grinned. "You just quietly burned down the house and served Esmores in the ashes." It was beautiful. I laughed until my eyes watered. That night, back at our place, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and looked out over the trees. The cicadas buzzed. The air smelled like honeysuckle and dusk. For 12 years, I had lived like a shadow in my sister's spotlight. I had cleaned up behind their perfect lives, filled the cracks, patched the gaps. And in doing so, I'd lost parts of myself I hadn't even realized were missing. But now, I had myself back. They saw me differently. Not because I demanded it. But because I'd walked away and made a life worth seeing. No fights. No screaming. No vindictive takedowns. Just a quiet, satisfying, undeniable truth: I was never the nanny. I was always the one who could have walked away. And finally, I had.